I think a lot of guys find out about their wives cheating by walking in at the wrong moment, overhearing some careless chat, or discovering something concrete, like suspiciously stained clothes. For me, it was much simpler. My wife sent me an email. Actually, she didn't mean to send it to me, although I bet James might argue otherwise. I guess her email app just autofilled my name, and she clicked without checking. It's an easy mistake, especially if you're in a rush. Still, I couldn't believe it when, after 18 years of marriage, I received a message from my wife with the subject line about yesterday. The thing is, yesterday was just a regular old Wednesday, nothing special. So I was confused why Eva would even need to email me about it. Curious, I opened it up and read. "Hey, I just wanted to say again how incredible yesterday was. You made me feel things I haven't felt in years. Can't wait until next week. Your sexy lady." Well, that hit me like a freight train. I had been at work the whole day on Wednesday, and as far as I knew, so had Eva. We didn't even talk on the phone. I did notice, though, that she was unusually cheerful when she got home that evening. Also, I've never called her anything like sexy lady. The message was clear as day: she was cheating. My first instinct was to confront her that evening, force her to explain, or more likely, confess. But I'm the type who likes to think things through. It wasn't hard to imagine she'd deny the whole thing, brush off the email as a joke, or make up some ridiculous excuse. I'd probably just end up looking like a fool. So after mulling it over, I chose to wait. For one, I was curious to see if she'd realize her mistake and come clean. If not, then I knew something was up and could use that info to my advantage for her next meeting. Eva works in real estate, so her hours are often unpredictable. That night, she came home much later than me. I watched her closely but didn't see anything out of the ordinary in her behavior. If she knew she had messed up, she sure didn't show it. I played it cool too, pretending nothing was wrong. The whole evening felt normal. But when we went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to figure out how to untangle this mess. Sure, there was a small chance there was some innocent explanation, and I didn't want to wreck my marriage by jumping to conclusions. I loved Eva, and the last thing I wanted was to push her away because I acted rashly. But if this email really was proof of an affair, our marriage was already in trouble, and I needed to deal with it. I'm not cold-hearted, I feel things. And the thought of Eva betraying me gnawed at me all night. But by morning, I'd come to a decision: I had to gather more evidence before I did anything. Once I accepted that, I finally got some sleep. The next morning, I got to work and immediately started thinking about what to do. The coming Wednesday would likely give me the answers I needed. So I hired a private investigator to tail Eva. If she didn't do anything suspicious, it would put my mind at ease, at least for a while. But if my suspicions were correct, I'd finally know the truth and could plan my next steps. That Wednesday came and went like any other. Eva and I both went to work and came home at the usual time. Nothing seemed off about her appearance or attitude. Later that night, I sat in my study reading some Edgar Allan Poe, trying to keep my anxiety in check. The following morning, I had an appointment with the detective to get the results of their surveillance. I'm not a particularly emotional person, but I can read people. The moment I walked into the agency, I knew the news wouldn't be good. The investigator couldn't even meet my eyes. It was just as I'd feared. The detective followed Eva from her office to a cheap motel near the airport. He handed me the photos. There she was, meeting some guy and walking into a room with him. The timestamp showed 1:52 p.m., and 2 hours later, there they were again, walking out hand in hand. "I'm sorry," the detective said. "It's never easy giving this kind of news. What would you like us to do next?" I hesitated. "I'll need your help again. It looks like this place is their regular spot. Is there any way to get pictures of what goes on inside the room?" The detective didn't blink. "We've done that before. We'll probably have to give the manager some cash for his cooperation, but if you're okay with that, we can get it done." I nodded. "The proof will be worth it." I headed back to my office, but I couldn't focus on work anymore. Now that all doubt was gone, my mind just stopped. After a while, I gave up trying and started making plans. Besides confirming Eva's infidelity, I now understood why she had sent me that email by accident. It turns out I knew the guy she was cheating with, our neighbor, Arthur Bradley. My name, Matt Benson, must have popped up after she typed the first 2 letters of his name. Careless of her not to double-check, but emotions mess with judgment. Realizing it was Arthur made the betrayal even worse. Arthur and his wife, Holly, were our friends. We often hung out, went to each other's houses for dinner, and caught movies together. How had I missed this? Was I blind, or were they just that good at hiding it? Either way, I knew I had to act. The question was, what now? For a few hours, I ran through a bunch of different ideas in my head. At times, I imagined taking some kind of revenge, and other times, I pictured myself pleading with Eva not to leave me. Questions about how long this had been going on and what started it kept torturing me. Anger and self-pity swirled together inside me. Eventually, I came to a decision. I knew exactly what I wanted to achieve, and I had a solid plan to make it happen. My strategy had two main parts, each working at the same time. I thought of it as a divide-and-conquer tactic, separate the two of them and win her back. For the divide part, I would use what I knew about Eva and Arthur to create a rift between them. If I played it right, I might be able to push them apart without too much effort. The conquer part would involve me becoming the perfect husband, all while subtly showing Eva the cracks in her relationship with Arthur. I hoped to remind her of the benefits of staying in our marriage. I made a ton of notes, writing down every step of my plan, planning the timing, and making sure each action would reinforce the other. When I was done, I realized a crucial part of the plan was that neither of them could know I was onto their affair. This would take patience and self-control, but I figured I could handle it. I've always been good at hiding my emotions. I decided not to act until I got another report from the detective agency. In the meantime, I started preparing. First, I bought a phone recorder for the house lines, as well as a voice-activated device, which I hid in Eva's car. I couldn't tap her cell phone, but I figured the car was the most likely place for her to talk to Arthur. I wasn't worried about her discussing things at work. The agency had an open-plan office, so it seemed unlikely she'd risk being overheard. Next, I hacked into Eva's email. Our home computer was already set up to access her work account, and while she had password-protected it, I knew where she kept her list of passwords. It didn't take long to break in, and I set up her emails to forward copies directly to me. Once inside, I found out their affair had only been going on for a month or so. This meant they were still in the honeymoon phase. My job was to end that phase as fast as possible. After setting up everything, all I had to do was wait for the next detective report. When it came, they didn't just provide photos, they also had video and audio. As tough as it was, I braced myself and watched. Seeing them together was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just the sex, it was the tenderness, the way they seemed to genuinely care for each other. For a moment, I wondered if my plan stood a chance, but I had nothing to lose by trying. Eva isn't very patient and doesn't handle disappointment well. I figured I could use that to shake things up between her and Arthur. At the same time, I knew she was a romantic, and I could use that to my advantage in winning her back. Having access to her emails was a huge bonus. It allowed me to plan my moves perfectly. Their next exchange gave me the chance I'd been waiting for. Are we still on for Wednesday? Absolutely. Same time, same place. Can't wait. Arthur. On the day of their meeting, I drove to Eva's office and parked out of sight. After she came back from lunch and went inside, I strolled over to her car. Checking to make sure no one was around, I let the air out of one of her tires and then headed back home. 20 minutes before she was supposed to meet Arthur at the motel, she called me. Hey, can you help me? My car's got a flat tire. Don't worry, hon, I said. Work's slow today, so I'll come help. Just need to wrap something up here first. I waited another 15 minutes before leaving, knowing I'd arrive just around the time she was supposed to meet Arthur. When I got there, she was pacing beside her car, clearly frustrated. Sorry I'm late, I said. It took longer than I thought. I took my time fixing the tire, deliberately slow. I parked my car behind hers, which conveniently blocked her in until I was done. By the time I finished, over an hour had passed since her meeting time with Arthur. Thanks again, she said. I hope this won't affect my appointment with the client. He'll understand, I replied calmly. While I was changing the tire, her phone rang a few times, but she didn't answer. She probably saw it was Arthur and didn't want to talk to him with me around. My suspicion was confirmed later when I got back to the office and read their email exchange. Where are you? I've been waiting for over an hour. Flat tire. You could have at least called. Matt was here fixing it. I couldn't exactly talk to you. Good, I thought. I had already put a strain on their plans. That night, after dinner, I led Eva to the couch, where I gently placed her feet in my lap and started giving her a foot massage. She looked at me, puzzled. I usually needed to be asked to do this. I know you had a rough day, I said, smiling. Just thought you could use a little treat. She eyed me like she was trying to figure out if I had an ulterior motive, but I just kept smiling and massaging her feet. Eventually, she relaxed, and soon enough, quiet signs of contentment escaped her lips. I didn't want to seem like I was trying too hard, so I waited until the following Monday before taking the next step. That morning, a huge bouquet of flowers arrived at her office with a card that said, "To the best wife a man could ask for." If she felt any guilt, she didn't show it. When she came home, she hugged me warmly, telling me how much the gesture had impressed the women at her office. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "You've never done anything like this before." "You're right," I said, pulling her into another hug. "And that's what I want to change. When your tire went flat the other day, I realized how much I love and appreciate you. I just wanted you to know that." She studied my face for a moment, hesitated, and then hugged me back tightly. "That's so sweet of you. It really means a lot." Despite her gratitude, I couldn't help but wonder if she felt the least bit guilty. From her emails, I knew they planned to make up for lost time with a special meeting later that week. I wanted to mess with their plans again, but this time I felt it might be too suspicious if I sabotaged Eva's car twice in a row. So instead, I let her go to the meeting without interference, but I followed her from a distance. Once they were inside the motel room, I snuck in through the side entrance. It was a run-down enough place that I knew they didn't have security cameras, so I triggered the fire alarm. Then I waited outside, knowing full well that Eva and Arthur would be forced out into the parking lot. I didn't spot them in the crowd, but I knew they had to be there, fuming. Later, back in my office, I couldn't stop grinning as I read the flurry of frustrated emails between them. What a disaster. "I'm so angry." "I'm sorry, but it wasn't my fault. Next time, book a place that isn't a fire trap." That evening, Eva came home in a foul mood. But her irritation quickly melted away when she walked into the kitchen and saw the dining table beautifully set with linen napkins and fine china. Her favorite meal was simmering on the stove. She looked at me, a playful smile on her face. "Who are you, and what have you done with my husband?" she teased. "Nothing special," I said modestly. "I called your office earlier, and they said you were in a meeting. Figured you'd appreciate not having to cook when you got home." For a split second, I saw fear flash across her face, but she recovered quickly, hugging me around the neck. "That's so sweet," she said. "You're treating me so well." After dinner, I insisted on doing the dishes myself. She gave me a warm look as I guided her into the living room, turning on her favorite show. As I headed back to the kitchen, I could feel her eyes following me, and I knew the conquer part of my plan was coming along nicely. Whatever doubts Eva might have had about the affair, the next email I intercepted from Arthur made it clear that no minor setback was going to stop him. He was determined to enjoy more of her sweetness and was ready to step up his game. "Okay, no more cheap motels, sexy lady. This time, I've booked a room at the Hyatt. We can finally spend some quality time together." "Arthur." "That sounds much better. See you there at the usual time." "Eva." Reading that exchange, I cursed Arthur's persistence and felt frustrated that Eva was still willing to meet him. Clearly, I needed to take stronger action. The day before their scheduled meeting, around noon, I called the Hyatt's reservation desk. "Hi, this is Arthur Bradley. I have a room booked for tomorrow, but something's come up, and I need to cancel." "No problem, sir," the receptionist replied. "Actually, we have a large conference, so your cancellation helps us out." I hung up the phone, feeling a wave of satisfaction. The next day, I couldn't resist going to the Hyatt just to see what would happen. I found a discreet spot in the lobby, hidden behind a newspaper, with a perfect view of the reception desk. Sure enough, Eva and Arthur showed up right on time, holding hands, laughing and looking like lovebirds. Their mood didn't last long, though. "I booked a room several days ago." Arthur protested to the receptionist. "I'm terribly sorry," the clerk replied. "But according to our records, your reservation was cancelled." "That's ridiculous." Arthur snapped. "Fine, book us a new room." The receptionist, looking genuinely apologetic, shook her head. "I'm afraid we're fully booked." there's a large convention in town, and most other hotels are sold out as well. You might want to try one of the smaller motels near the airport." Eva's face flushed red with anger, and I saw her clench her fists. While Arthur continued arguing at the desk, she yanked his sleeve. "Never mind," she hissed. "Let's just get out of here. I'm not in the mood anyway." She stormed out to the parking lot, with Arthur trailing behind, trying unsuccessfully to calm her down. I waited until they both drove off before leaving my spot. Mission accomplished, I thought with satisfaction. That evening, when Eva came home, I was ready. I intercepted her at the door. "Don't even think about going inside," I said with a smile. "We're going out." "Wait, what?" she asked, confused. "No questions." "I've got a surprise for you," I replied, taking her by the hand and leading her to the car. As I started driving, she kept watching me curiously, trying to guess what I had planned. Her confusion turned to anxiety when I pulled into the parking lot of the Hyatt. "Why are we here?" she asked, sounding nervous. "You'll see," I winked. We took the elevator to the rooftop restaurant, which boasted a beautiful revolving dome. As we arrived, the maitre d' greeted me. "Ah, right on time," he said, leading us to a table with a perfect view of the city skyline. Eva gave me a suspicious look. "Why did you choose this place?" "No special reason," I shrugged. "I just wanted a beautiful setting for my beautiful wife." She smiled uneasily at my compliment but looked impressed. "How did you even get a reservation?" "I heard this place was booked solid because of some conference." "I called earlier today," I said nonchalantly. "No big deal." Eva didn't say much, but I could see her comparing the success of our night to the disaster she'd experienced with Arthur earlier. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. "I took the liberty of ordering in advance," I said, smiling. "I hope you don't mind." She seemed grateful for the thoughtfulness and finally began to relax. Her mood lightened even more when the waiter brought over a bottle of champagne and a bucket of ice. We toasted several times, and I made sure each toast was in her honor. By the time the oysters arrived, she was positively glowing. I'm not much of an oyster fan, but Eva loves them. For the main course, I'd ordered an aqua salad with salmon and black olive sauce. She was pleasantly surprised. "I thought you'd order something heavy, like a steak," she said with a playful grin. "This is perfect." "I know how much you love salads," I replied. "Besides, we wouldn't want to overdo it." She raised an eyebrow but didn't press the matter. For dessert, we had fresh raspberries with whipped cream and glasses of Grand Marnier. It was the perfect ending, and Eva seemed delighted. On the drive home, she unbuckled her seatbelt and snuggled up against me, her mood softened by the champagne and oysters. I could tell she was both emotionally drained and physically relieved after the fiasco with Arthur. When we got home, I led her straight upstairs to the bedroom. "Why don't you slip into something more comfortable?" I suggested, nodding toward the wardrobe. "I'll take care of a few things." As she moved to the closet, I quickly darted down the hall to the guest room to make sure everything was set up. When I came back, I was pleased to see she had chosen a sleek black nightgown that hinted at every curve of her body. I led her down the hall to the guest room, where candles cast a soft glow over the bed. Eva stood there, stunned by the sight. I walked up behind her and gently tied a blindfold over her eyes. "You won't be needing your sight tonight," I whispered. "Touch and scent will be more than enough." With that, I led her to the bed, slowly undressing her. Once she lay on the fresh sheets, I uncapped a small bottle of almond oil and let her inhale the fragrance. Warming the oil in my hands, I started massaging her legs. Her soft moans told me I was doing everything right. I didn't linger long, moving up to her calves and thighs, making sure she felt completely at ease. Her body tensed in anticipation, and I could feel her giving in. Turning her over gently, I began to work her back, moving over her shoulders and down to her lower body. I massaged her buttocks and back with firm, steady strokes until her body relaxed entirely. The sound of her pleasure fueled my own desire, and soon enough, I gave in, letting passion take over completely. Her moans built into a long, drawn-out scream, echoing my own growl, until we both reached our peak and collapsed together. Once I caught my breath, I removed the blindfold from her face. Her eyes were closed, and it looked like she had either fainted or was simply too exhausted to move. I took a deep breath, gathered her up in my arms, and carried her to our bedroom, laying her gently on the bed. After covering her with a sheet, I watched as she quickly drifted off to sleep. I cleaned myself up with a sponge at the sink and then slipped into bed beside her, deeply satisfied with how the evening had gone. Usually, Eva and I have different morning schedules due to work, but the next day, she got up earlier than usual. When I made my way downstairs, I found her in the kitchen, already having made coffee and breakfast. As soon as she saw me, her eyes sparkled. "Thank you, darling," she said warmly. "Last night was really special." "I'm so glad you enjoyed it," I replied. "I know I'll remember it for a long, long time." She smiled, and I could sense that we were truly making progress. But later that day, I intercepted another email exchange between Eva and Arthur, and it was clear that Arthur wasn't ready to give up yet. "I'm really sorry about what happened at the Hyatt," Eva wrote. "I still don't understand how they managed to lose the reservation." "Don't worry about it, sexy lady," Arthur replied. "Let me make it up to you. Can you get away this Saturday? My wife's out of town, and we could spend the whole day at my lake house. No booking mix-ups, no fire alarms, just pure love. Matt's always playing golf on Saturdays. I could probably slip away while he's there," Eva responded. "Great, I can't wait to touch that hot body of yours again," Arthur added. Their plans posed a real problem. Canceling my golf game wasn't an option, and Eva could always make up some excuse to leave while I was gone. Tampering with her car again would raise suspicion, and interfering at the lake house was out of the question. It wasn't as accessible as a motel. I needed Eva to change her plans on her own, ideally at the last minute. Then, a brilliant idea hit me, and it only took one quick phone call to set things in motion. For the rest of the week, I kept to my usual routine, but on Friday evening, I discreetly swapped out the battery in Eva's phone with a dead one. This way, if she tried to call Arthur over the weekend, it would have to be from the home phone, giving me the perfect chance to eavesdrop. Eva and I typically dressed casually on weekends, but that Saturday, she came downstairs in a nice skirt and blouse. I lazily wondered what kind of lingerie she had on underneath. As the time for my golf game approached, I noticed her watching me closely, probably wondering why I hadn't started getting dressed for golf yet. By 10 a.m., my usual departure time, I still hadn't made any move to leave. I could see her growing more impatient, probably preparing an excuse to slip out. Finally, she couldn't take it any longer and confronted me. "Aren't you playing golf today?" she asked, her voice slightly demanding. Just then, the doorbell rang. Eva looked at me, puzzled, and went to answer it. "Polly? What are you doing here?" Eva exclaimed, surprised. "Is that any way to greet your little sister?" Polly asked playfully as she stepped inside, embracing Eva warmly. "Of course, I'm happy to see you," Eva mumbled. "I just wasn't expecting you." Polly smiled at me. "I'm here because your wonderful husband invited me. He called earlier this week and said you had no plans, so we thought it'd be a great idea for us to spend the weekend together. We haven't seen each other in so long, so I jumped at the chance." Eva and Polly were very close, always talking on the phone, but since Polly lived about 200 miles away, they rarely got to visit in person. "How wonderful that you're here," Eva said, clearly caught off guard. Then she turned to me. "So this is why you're not going golfing today?" "Well," I said with a smile, "nothing's more important than giving my wife some time with her sister. And now, ladies," I added, "why don't we all get ready for breakfast? I'm taking you out." Polly glanced down at her casual jeans and t-shirt. "You might want to change into something a bit more formal, but you look lovely either way," I told her. Eva blushed slightly, clearly remembering why she dressed up in the first place. Trying to hide her reaction, she recovered quickly. "Why don't you help Polly with her bag while she gets settled?" Eva said. "I'll make a quick call." I watched her walk down the hall, and a minute later, I heard her cursing under her breath. She emerged holding her unresponsive phone. "Ugh, the battery's dead," she grumbled. "Oh no, that's a shame," I said sympathetically. "But you can always use the landline." "Never mind," she said quickly, brushing it off. "It wasn't that important anyway. Now, where are we going for breakfast?" The rest of the weekend was spent making sure both sisters had a great time. We went out, laughed, and caught up like old friends. On Sunday afternoon, as Polly was leaving, she gave me a long, heartfelt hug. "You've got a wonderful husband," she told Eva. "Take good care of him." Eva winced ever so slightly but quickly smiled and gave me a hug, too. "Of course," she promised. I was fairly certain Eva had found time to call Arthur during the weekend, but I wasn't worried. If she had, the call would have been made from the landline, and I had everything recorded. Later that evening, after Eva went to bed, I checked the recording device. Sure enough, the call had been made early Sunday morning. "Arthur, it's me," Eva said. "Where the hell have you been?" Arthur growled. "You didn't show up on Saturday, and every time I called, it went straight to voicemail." "I'm really sorry," Eva replied. "My sister unexpectedly came to town, and my phone was dead. I couldn't do anything about it." "Couldn't you have left Saturday afternoon?" Arthur snapped. "I couldn't. Matt took us around the city," Eva explained. "What about today?" "I can't leave her, Arthur. We haven't seen each other in months." Arthur was fuming. "I sat here at the lake house all day with nothing but my own thoughts, waiting for you. Do you ever think about anything besides yourself?" Eva shot back, sounding annoyed. "Fine," Arthur said, resigned. "I get it. Let's not fight about this," Eva sighed. "I need to go before Matt notices." Hearing the tension in their conversation thrilled me. Their frustration was nearing its boiling point, and I knew I had landed a significant blow to their relationship. I could only hope it was enough. When I checked their emails on Monday, it confirmed what I suspected. "Are we still on for this week?" "Arthur. I don't think so. This is getting too complicated, and it's starting to really bother me. Besides, Matt has been really sweet to me lately, and I feel guilty sneaking around behind his back. I think we need to end this." "Eva. Don't say that. At least one more time?" "Arthur. No, I'm serious. It's over." "Eva. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. You're still a sexy lady, but I get it. Maybe it's for the best. I don't want to lose Holly either. But I hope we can still be friends." "Arthur. Of course, we'll still be friends. Just not with benefits." "Eva. Success." I had created enough disruption in their relationship to bring it to an end. Now, I just needed to wrap up the second part of my plan. When Eva came home that evening, she seemed distant and quiet. A few times, I thought I saw tears in her eyes. I didn't want to push, but I also felt it would be strange to completely ignore her mood. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" I asked with concern. "You seem a little off today. Rough day at work?" "It's nothing serious," she said without looking at me. "Probably just in a bad mood. Maybe hormones or something." I nodded and gave her space, but inwardly, I was certain she was mourning the end of her affair with Arthur. Even though she had been the one to end it, I knew Eva well enough to understand she'd invested emotionally in the relationship. Breaking things off was hard for her, which reassured me that she had truly ended it. The next morning, Eva seemed in a much better mood, more like her usual self. Throughout the day, I saw no further communication between her and Arthur, which boosted my confidence that neither of them had any second thoughts. The sense of triumph inside me grew with each passing hour. That evening, after dinner, Eva came into the study where I was sitting with one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe books. "What are you reading?" she asked. "One of my favorites, The Cask of Amontillado," I replied. "I don't think I know that one," she said as she snuggled up next to me. She looked at me with a sincere expression. "Can I interrupt you for a minute?" she asked. "I just wanted to say, I have such a wonderful husband." She gazed into my eyes, her voice full of emotion. "You've been so kind to me these past few weeks, and I feel so lucky to have you." Hearing those words, my heart soared. This was the moment I had been working toward. I looked at her, waiting for what she would say next. For a brief second, I noticed a flicker of guilt cross her face, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I really don't deserve you," she whispered. "No," I said calmly, "it's me who doesn't deserve you." Then, I reached into my desk drawer. And I certainly didn't deserve this. My voice turned sharp as I tossed a stack of photos into her lap, pictures of her and Arthur at the motel. For a moment, Eva looked confused, trying to make sense of the sudden change in my tone. But as her eyes settled on the photos and she realized what they showed, she let out a wail. "Oh God, no! No!" I silently handed her a set of divorce papers that my lawyer had filed earlier that day. When Eva recognized what they were, she gasped in shock. "But I thought I mean, isn't there any way we can?" "No," I cut her off coldly. Then, I handed her another envelope. And in case you're interested, here's a copy of the letter I sent to Holly tonight, along with the detective's report. I've also sent a similar letter to your sister, Polly, explaining why I'm divorcing you. Eva moaned in despair, breaking down into sobs. I just don't understand, she cried. You've been so loving and caring these past weeks, and now you're being so cruel. Doesn't any of it mean anything to you? My dear, I said in an even voice, the moment you began your sordid little affair, you ended any love I had for you. These past few weeks? I only played the part of the caring husband to make sure you understood what you were losing. Eva continued to sob, collapsing onto the sofa, her entire body shaking with grief. I stood, calm and composed, watching as her world fell apart. As for how I treated you, I continued, it was all part of the plan. I wanted you to know exactly what you'd lost when you decided to betray me. And judging by the results, I'd say my plan worked perfectly. With that, I placed my copy of the Edgar Allan Poe book on top of the documents, leaving it open to the cask of Amontillado. I had already marked the page with the Montresor family motto, Nemo me impune laces sit or no one insults me with impunity.